during his descent were clearly artificial, which suggested either current inhabitants, or at least the possibility of better protection than his damaged ship could provide. Wrapping himself in his weather cloak, Marcus activated his personal shield generator and stepped into the tempest. The wind nearly knocked him down immediately, and the crystalline rain struck his shields with enough force to create a constant light show around his body. Each step was a battle against the elements as he fought. His way toward the stone structure's what he found defied his expectations. The buildings were carved from a single massive crystal formation, their surfaces polished to mirror brightness and inlaid with precious metals that formed intricate patterns. This wasn't some abandoned ruin. The metalwork was too pristine, the crystal too perfectly maintained. Someone lived here, and they were clearly quite wealthy. As Marcus approached what appeared to be the main entrance, he heard something that made his blood run cold, the sound of combat. Steel rang against steel, accompanied by shouts in a language his universal translator struggled to process. Through the translucent crystal walls, he could see moving figures, two people engaged in what looked like a deadly serious fight. His first instinct was to mind his own business. Marcus had survived this long by avoiding local conflicts whenever possible. Every world had its problems, and getting involved usually meant acquiring enemies you didn't need. But as he watched, one figure clearly smaller and more desperate stumbled and fell. The larger opponent raised their weapon for what was obviously a killing blow. Marcus had spent years in space, but he'd grown up on frontier colonies where decent people helped each other survive. Some principles ran deeper than pragmatism. The entrance wasn't locked, or perhaps his desperation triggered some kind of automatic system. The crystal doors slid open silently, admitting him to a circular chamber with a domed ceiling that revealed the storm raging overhead through transparent panels. The space was clearly designed for combat, with smooth crystal floors and carved galleries where spectators could watch. At the chamber's center, two figures faced each other in the final moments of their duel. The larger combatant was clearly not human, tall and broad, with skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light and eyes that reflected the chamber's ambient illumination like a cat's. His opponent was smaller, more delicate, but undeniably humanoid. Female, Marcus thought, though her features were refined in a way that suggested she might not be entirely human either. She was on one knee, breathing hard, her elaborate armor cracked and bloodied. In her hands, she clutched a sword unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The blade seemed to be forged from the same crystal as the building itself, but it pulsed with an inner light that made it appear almost alive. Her opponent's weapon was more conventional, a heavy blade of dark metal that looked designed for brutal efficiency rather than beauty. Yield, daughter of nothing, the larger fighter commanded an accented but understandable standard. Your family's time is over. I would rather die than surrender my birthright, she replied, her voice steady despite her obvious exhaustion. That was when Marcus realized this wasn't just a fight, it was an execution. The woman was clearly outmatched, and her opponent was savoring the moment before delivering the killing blow. Every instinct Marcus possessed screamed at him to intervene. He moved without conscious thought, his hand closing around the fallen woman's sword, just as her opponent's blade descended toward her neck. The crystal weapon felt strangely warm in his grip, almost welcoming, and when it met the descending strike, the impact sent shock waves through both combatants. Marcus had expected the heavier fighter to overpower him easily, but the crystal blade seemed to enhance his strength, allowing him to not just block the attack, but drive his opponent back several steps. The chamber fell completely silent, except for the storm raging overhead. The woman stared at him with eyes like liquid starlight, her expression a mixture of shock, gratitude, and something that might have been horror. Her opponent, who Marcus now realized, was definitely not human, with features that suggested some kind of feline ancestry, looked equally stunned. Impossible, the feline warrior breathed. The blade accepted him. Before Marcus could ask what that meant, figures emerged from the shadows around the chamber's perimeter. They wore elaborate robes and moved with the dignity of age and authority. One of them, a woman whose hair shone like spun silver, approached with measured steps. "The ancient law is clear," she announced in a voice that carried absolute authority. "He who takes up the clan blade in defense of its bearer becomes bound to that, bearer by bonds of honor and blood." Marcus blinked. "I'm sorry, what now?" The woman he'd saved struggled to her feet, her face pale beneath what Marcus now realized was slightly luminescent skin. "You don't understand," she said urgently. "By wielding my family's blade, you've invoked the marriage bond. According to our laws, you're now my husband." The crystal sword in Marcus's hand seemed to pulse with warmth, as if acknowledging her words. Around the chamber, more figures appeared, some in elaborate dress that suggested nobility, others in simpler clothing that marked them as servants or followers. All of them were staring at Marcus with expressions ranging from amazement to suspicion to outright hostility. "Marriage?" Marcus repeated faintly. "I was just trying to stop him from killing you." The elder woman smiled, but it wasn't entirely reassuring. "Intent is irrelevant. The blade chooses who is worthy, and it has chosen you. I am Elder Mystara, keeper of the ancient ways. You are now bound to Lady Seraphina Valdris, last heir of her house, by laws that predate stellar civilization on this world." Seraphina, for that was apparently her name, stepped closer to Marcus, her movements still graceful despite her injuries. Up close, she was breathtakingly beautiful in an otherworldly way. Her skin held a subtle luminescence that seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat, and her silver hair fell in waves past her shoulders. But it was her eyes that captured Marcus's attention. They held depths like twilight skies, filled with stars he'd never seen. "I know this isn't what you intended," she said softly, her voice carrying a musical quality that Marcus's translator couldn't quite capture. "But you've saved more than just my life. My house was on the verge of extinction, our lands claimed by rivals, our people scattered. By accepting the blade, you've given us hope." The feline warrior who'd been trying to kill her stepped forward, his expression thunderous. "This is Torvin Blackstone of House Ironlaw," Seraphina said quickly. "He was claiming my father's lands through combat, as is his right under our laws." "Was," Torvin emphasized, his voice a growl that seemed to resonate from deep in his chest. "The human's interference has voided the combat. But this marriage farce won't stand. An outsider cannot claim clan rights." Elder Mystara raised her hand for silence. "The law is ancient and absolute. The blade has made its choice. However," she turned to Marcus, "the bonding must be confirmed through trials. You have one full cycle of our 3 moons to prove yourself worthy of House Valdris and Lady Seraphine's hand." Marcus looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching him with varying degrees of hope, skepticism, and hostility. He thought about his damaged ship, his cargo contract that was now definitely void, and the life he'd built as a free trader among the stars. Then he looked at Seraphina, who was watching him with an expression that suggested she was trying very hard not to hope for something she'd never expected to find. "What exactly do these trials involve?" he asked finally. "Combat, wisdom, leadership, and proof that you can sire strong heirs for the bloodline," Torvin said with obvious satisfaction, clearly expecting Marcus to flee at the mention of such challenges. "And if I fail?" Seraphine's expression grew grave. "Then my house dies with me, our lands are claimed by our enemies, and you're free to return to your ship and your former life." Marcus considered this. He'd never planned on marriage, certainly not to an alien princess on a world where apparently people settled disputes with sword fights. But he'd also never been one to abandon someone who needed help, and there was something about Seraphina, a strength beneath her grace, a fire in her star-filled eyes, that intrigued him more than he wanted to admit. "Well," he said finally, managing a crooked smile as he hefted the crystal blade that had somehow changed his entire life, "I guess I've had worse job offers." The chamber erupted in a mixture of gasps, cheers, and angry muttering, but Marcus only had eyes for Seraphine's reaction. The hope that blazed across her face was worth whatever trials lay ahead. As Elder Mystara began speaking about bonding ceremonies and trials by combat, Marcus reflected that he'd come to Nexra looking for a simple emergency landing and had somehow ended up engaged to a warrior princess whose family Sword apparently had opinions about his marriage. Prospects. It was, he decided, definitely going to make for an interesting story, assuming he survived long enough to tell it. The Valdris stronghold was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Carved directly into the heart of a massive crystal mountain, its corridors and chambers were lit by the natural luminescence of the walls themselves. Veins of precious metals traced intricate patterns through the translucent stone, creating a constantly shifting display of light and shadow that seemed almost alive. Seraphina led him through winding passages, her movements graceful despite the injuries she'd sustained in the duel. She'd changed from her damaged combat armor into flowing robes of deep blue that complemented her luminescent skin, making her appear almost ethereal in the crystal-filtered light. "Your chambers are in the East Wing," she explained, her voice echoing softly in the corridor. "Traditionally, bonded pairs share quarters immediately, but given the unusual circumstances of our union, I thought you might prefer privacy while you adjust." Marcus was grateful for her consideration. Everything about this situation was overwhelming the alien architecture. The political implications he was only beginning to understand, and the woman beside him, who was somehow now his wife, according to local law. "I appreciate that. This is all a bit much to process." "I imagine it is." She paused at a junction where corridors branched in 3 directions, each marked with glowing symbols in what Marcus assumed was the local script. "You should know that not everyone in the household is pleased with recent developments. My people are traditional. They don't trust outsiders easily." As if summoned by her words, a young man emerged from one of the side passages. He shared Seraphine's luminescent skin and silver hair, though his was shorter and his features more angular. His eyes held the same starlight depths as Seraphine's, but where hers showed warmth, his were cold with suspicion. "Sister," he said formally, though Marcus's translator caught undertones of affection beneath the cool courtesy. "I see you're giving our unexpected guest a tour. Jackson," Seraphine's voice carried a warning. "This is Marcus Kane, my bonded husband according to the Blade's choosing. Marcus, this is my younger brother, Jackson Valdris." Jackson studied Marcus with undisguised skepticism. He was younger than Seraphina, probably in his early 20s by human standards, but he carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "So you're the human who thinks he can save our house by waving a sword around." "I'm the human who happened to be in the right place at the right time," Marcus replied evenly. "Whether I can save anything remains to be seen." "Indeed it does." Jackson circled Marcus like a predator evaluating prey. "Tell me, off-worlder, what do you know about running a house? About managing crystal mines and negotiating trade agreements? About the political alliances that keep our people fed and protected?" "Jackson!" Seraphine's voice sharpened with command. "These are fair questions, sister. If this man is to be our salvation, shouldn't we know what qualifications he brings beyond lucky timing?" Marcus met the young man's challenging gaze. "You're right to question me. Where I come from, I run a small cargo operation. I negotiate contracts, manage resources, deal with pirates and corporate agents, and keep my ship and crew alive in hostile territory. It's not the same as what you do here, but leadership principles tend to be universal. Cargo running." Jackson's tone dripped disdain. "How rustic." Before the confrontation could escalate further, Soft footsteps announced another arrival. A woman appeared from the same passage Jackson had emerged from, moving with the silent grace of someone trained in stealth. She was older than Serafina, her silver hair streaked with darker strands that caught the crystal light, and her clothing marked her as a servant, though she carried herself with quiet dignity. "My lady," she addressed Serafina with a respectful bow. "Forgive the interruption, but the household staff requires guidance regarding our guests' accommodations." "Of course." "Celeste, this is Marcus Kane. Marcus, this is Celeste Moonwhisper, my personal attendant, and the closest thing I have to a mother since mine passed." Celeste's evaluation of Marcus was more subtle than Jackson's, but no less thorough. "Welcome to House Valdres, Marcus Kane. I'm sure you'll find our customs educational. I'm looking forward to learning them," Marcus replied, sensing undercurrents in the conversation that his translator couldn't capture. "Good," Serafina said, relief evident in her voice. "Celeste, please prepare the Eastern guest suite. Marcus will need everything clothing appropriate to his new station, personal items, and access to the household archives for study." "Study?" Marcus asked. "You have 27 days to prove yourself worthy of House Valdres," Serafina explained. "That means understanding our history, our laws, our customs, and our current political situation. Knowledge will be as important as combat skill in the trials ahead." Jackson snorted. "Combat skill? Has anyone actually seen him fight? Or are we basing everything on one lucky sword swing?" "The blade chose him," Serafina said firmly. "That's enough. The blade is a piece of metal, sister. It doesn't think. You know better than that." Seraphan's voice carried a mixture of frustration and affection. "The Valdres blade has been in our family for 800 years. It's bonded with the blood and spirit of our ancestors. When it accepts someone, there's always a reason." Marcus found himself studying the sword, which now hung at his side in an ornate scabbard. Even sheathed, he could feel its presence, a warmth that seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. "I have to admit, it does feel unusual, like it's alive somehow." "Because it is, in a sense," Celeste spoke for the first time since her introduction. "The crystal from which it's forged comes from the heart of our mountain. It's been exposed to 8 centuries of family bonds, of love and loss and sacrifice. Some say it holds the memories of every Valdres who's ever wielded it." "Superstition," Jackson muttered, but Marcus noticed he didn't meet anyone's eyes when he said it. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of another figure, a man in elaborate robes who moved with the measured pace of someone who expected others to wait for him. His features were sharper than the Valdres family's, and his silver hair was elaborately braided with golden threads that suggested high rank. "Lady Serafina," he said with a bow that managed to be technically correct while conveying subtle disrespect. "I heard rumors about your unusual solution to the succession crisis." "Regent Thorn," Seraphine's voice cooled noticeably. "I wasn't expecting you today. Surely you understand that recent events have created a need for immediate discussion. The marriage of our last noble heir to an alien has implications that extend far beyond House Valdres." Marcus didn't like the way Thorn said alien, or the calculating look in his eyes. "I take it you disapprove of the match?" "My personal opinions are irrelevant," Thorn replied smoothly. "However, the political ramifications are significant. Many of our neighboring houses are concerned about the precedent this sets. What's to stop every struggling bloodline from importing off-world husbands to avoid extinction?" "The blade's acceptance," Serafina said coldly, "which has never happened before in recorded history. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say?" Thorn's smile was sharp. "Your house faces extinction, and suddenly an alien appears at precisely the right moment to save you. Some might call that suspicious." Marcus felt his temper stirring, but forced himself to remain calm. This was obviously a political challenge, and responding with anger would only prove Thorn's point about his unsuitability. Some might also call it fortunate. Unless you're suggesting Lady Seraphina somehow arranged for my ship to crash and then staged her own near death for my benefit? Of course not. Thorn backpedaled smoothly. I merely point out that this union will face significant scrutiny. The trials ahead will be rigorous. I'm looking forward to them, Marcus replied, putting steel in his voice. After Thorn departed with promises to observe the proceedings, with great interest, Seraphina led Marcus to his chambers. The suite was larger than his entire ship, with walls of clear crystal that offered stunning views of the mountain valleys below. Furniture carved from single pieces of rare wood had been arranged with an eye for both beauty and function. I should apologize for both Jackson and Thorn, Seraphina said, as she showed him around the rooms. My brother is protective and suspicious by nature. And Thorn, he's been circling our house like a scavenger, waiting for us to fall so he can claim our holdings. Political vultures exist on every world, Marcus said. The question is, how much power does he have? More than I'd like. He represents the interests of several minor houses who've been eyeing our crystal mines for years. If I fail to produce an acceptable heir, our holdings revert to the collective council, which he effectively controls. Marcus absorbed this information while examining a bookshelf filled with volumes in various scripts. And an acceptable heir requires marriage to someone the blade accepts, followed by children who can inherit both the bloodline gifts and the house's responsibilities. Seraphine's cheeks showed the faint luminescent equivalent of a blush, which brings us to the more personal aspects of our situation. An awkward silence fell between them. Marcus had been carefully not thinking about the physical implications of their bonding, focusing instead on the political and cultural challenges. But the reality was that they were legally married to two people who barely knew each other. We don't have to rush anything, he said finally. I mean, we have time to figure out this. He gestured vaguely between them. Seraphine's relief was visible. Thank you. I know this is difficult for both of us. An arranged marriage is one thing, but this. We've had no time to even become acquainted, let alone develop the kind of relationship that should precede such intimacy. Agreed. So maybe we start with getting to know each other? You could tell me about your world, your family, what you hope to accomplish. And I can share my story too. She smiled, and Marcus felt something warm stir in his chest. When she wasn't playing the role of a formal lady or a warrior defending her people, Seraphina was remarkably beautiful. Not just physically, though. Her otherworldly features were striking, but in the way she carried herself, the intelligence in her eyes, the strength that showed even in moments of vulnerability. I'd like that, she said. Perhaps we could start with dinner? Celeste is an excellent cook, and I could show you some of our traditional foods. I'd enjoy that. Fair warning, though. Human digestive systems can be sensitive to alien cuisine. Oh, we're quite compatible in that regard. The blade wouldn't have accepted you if our biologies weren't complementary. She paused, realizing the implications of what she'd said. I mean, in terms of basic physiological functions, not other things. Necessarily. The blush that spread across her luminescent features was actually quite lovely, and Marcus found himself smiling genuinely for the first time since crash landing on this world. I understood what you meant. And dinner sounds perfect. As Seraphina left to make arrangements, Marcus found himself looking forward to the evening with an anticipation that surprised him. Maybe this whole situation wasn't the disaster he'd initially thought. Maybe, with time and patience, they could build something real together. The crystal blade at his side pulsed with warmth, as if approving of his thoughts. 2 weeks into his stay at the Valder stronghold, Marcus had begun to find a rhythm in his new life. His days started before dawn with combat training under Seraphine's instruction, followed by lessons in Nexarian history, politics, and customs with various tutors. Afternoons were spent learning to manage the crystal mining operations that formed the backbone of the Valdris wealth, and evenings. Evenings had become something he looked forward to more than he cared to admit. "Your stance is improving," Serafina said as they sparred in the crystal training chamber. The Valdris blade felt increasingly natural in his hands, its warm pulse now as familiar as his own heartbeat. "But you're still thinking too much. Trust your instincts." Marcus adjusted his grip and tried again, flowing through the defensive patterns she'd been teaching him. The blade seemed to guide his movements, and for a moment he felt perfectly balanced, perfectly in tune with the weapon's rhythm. "Better," Serafina approved, lowering her practice sword. "You're beginning to understand the blade's nature. It responds to emotion and intent as much as technique." "Speaking of emotion," Marcus said, offering her a towel as they finished their session, "you seem tense today." "More so than usual." Seraphine's expression grew troubled. "The formal trials begin in 3 days. High Priestess Luna arrives tomorrow to oversee the proceedings, and ... She hesitated. "And Vesper Nightshade returns with her. She was once my closest friend, before she aligned herself with those who seek our downfall." Before Marcus could ask for details, Jackson appeared in the chamber doorway. Over the past 2 weeks, Seraphine's brother had gradually warmed to Marcus, though he still maintained an air of skeptical observation. "Sister, the supply wagons from the northern mines are 3 days overdue. The foremen are reporting increased attacks by Iron Maw raiders." Seraphine's face darkened. "Torvin grows bold. He knows the trials approach and seeks to weaken our position." "I could take a patrol north," Marcus offered. "Check on the mining operations, assess the threat." Both siblings looked at him in surprise. "You would do that?" Jackson asked. "Risk yourself for workers you've never met? They're Valdris people now, aren't they?" "That makes them my responsibility, too." Something shifted in Jackson's expression, grudging respect that hadn't been there before. "Perhaps you understand more about leadership than I gave you credit for." Their planning was interrupted by Celeste's arrival. "My lady, you have visitors." High Priestess Luna has arrived early, accompanied by Lady Vesper Nightshade. Serafina went very still. "Show them to the formal receiving chamber. We'll attend them shortly." As Celeste departed, Marcus noticed the tension radiating from Serafina. "What aren't you telling me about this Vesper?" "She was to be my sister-in-law," Serafina said quietly. "Before the political winds changed, she was betrothed to my older brother Kieran. When he died in the crystal mine's collapse, she withdrew her family's support from our house. Some say she blames us for his death. Others believe she saw an opportunity to advance her own interests by aligning with stronger houses. And you? What do you believe?" Seraphine's smile was sad. "I believe that grief and ambition can poison even the deepest friendships." Formal receiving chamber was a masterwork of crystal architecture, its domed ceiling reaching toward the sky, while prismatic walls cast rainbow patterns across the floor. High Priestess Luna stood at the room's center, her ancient features serene beneath a crown of woven silver. Beside her waited a woman whose beauty was sharp enough to cut dark hair that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, violet eyes that held depths Marcus couldn't read, and features that spoke of aristocratic breeding. "Serafina," the priestess spoke in a voice like distant music. "You look well, considering recent developments." "High Priestess," Serafina bowed formally. "Thank you for honoring us with your presence. And you must be the infamous Marcus Kane." Vesper stepped forward, her smile not reaching her eyes. "The human who thinks he can play at being Nexarian nobility." "I'm not playing at anything," Marcus replied evenly. "I'm learning to fulfill responsibilities I never sought but won't abandon." Vesper laughed, the sound like breaking glass. How refreshingly honest. "Tell me, do you dream of Kieran Valdris? He died in those mines, you know." crushed beneath tons of crystal while trying to save trapped workers. A true hero's death. Marcus felt Seraphina tense beside him, but kept his expression neutral. I'm sorry for your loss. And for Lady Seraphine's loss of her brother. Are you? Or are you simply grateful that his death opened a path for your own advancement? That's enough, Vesper. Seraphine's voice carried cold authority. If you're here to oversee the trials, then do so. If you're here to reopen old wounds, you can leave now. Oh, I'm here for the trials, Vesper assured her. I wouldn't miss seeing whether your human pet can truly prove himself worthy, though I suspect the outcome is already determined. High Priestess Luna stepped between them. The trials will proceed according to ancient law. 3 tests: combat prowess, wisdom and leadership, and proof of spiritual bonding with the blade. Each must be witnessed and validated. And if he fails even one? Vesper asked sweetly. Then the bonding is voided, and House Valdris must face its extinction with honor, Luna replied solemnly. That evening, as storm clouds gathered over the crystal peaks, Marcus found himself unable to concentrate on his studies. He'd been reading about the historical precedents for the trials, but the words seemed to blur together on the page. A soft knock at his chamber door interrupted his brooding. Come in, Seraphina entered, carrying a tray with 2 cups of steaming liquid that smelled like exotic spices. I thought you might appreciate some company. And some narrow tea? It helps calm the mind. Thank you. Marcus accepted the cup gratefully. I have to ask, what exactly is Vesper's game here? Beyond obviously trying to undermine your confidence in me? Seraphina settled into the chair across from him, her expression thoughtful. Vesper has always been ambitious. When she was to marry Kieran, she would have become part of our house, shared in our prosperity. When he died, she lost that future. Now she represents the Nightshade interests, and they have much to gain from our fall. She's trying to seduce me. The words hung between them, stark and honest. Seraphine's cup paused halfway to her lips. I see you've noticed her methods, she said carefully. Hard to miss. The question is, why are you warning me about it instead of using it as an excuse to void our bonding yourself? Their moment was shattered by urgent pounding on the chamber door. Marcus opened it to find one of the house guards, his face grim with bad news. Lord Marcus, Lady Seraphina, you must come quickly. The mining convoy has been found. They were attacked by raiders, but that's not the worst of it. Captain Xander Cross is here, claiming to be your friend. He says he's come to rescue you from this alien marriage trap, and he's brought a ship full of mercenaries to back up his offer. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. Xander Cross, his oldest friend, his former partner in various questionable enterprises, and someone who had never understood the concept of backing down from a fight. Where is he now? Marcus asked. In the main courtyard, demanding to see you. He's got 20 armed humans with him, and Lady Vesper is out there talking to them. From what I could overhear, she's very interested in offering them hospitality. Marcus and Seraphina exchanged grim looks. This is bad, Marcus muttered. Very bad, Seraphina agreed. If Vesper convinces your friend that you're being held against your will, it could provide the excuse certain houses need to intervene militarily. They could claim they're rescuing you from alien coercion. As they hurried toward the courtyard, Marcus's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Xander was loyal but impulsive, and if Vesper was already working on him, they emerged into the main courtyard to find a tense standoff. Xander Cross stood at the center of a group of armed humans, his weathered face set in stubborn lines. He was older than Marcus, graying at the temples, but still carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd survived countless dangerous situations. Around the courtyard's perimeter, Valdris guards maintained position while trying not to appear overtly threatening, and there was Vesper, positioned perfectly between the two groups. her expression one of concerned sympathy as she spoke with Xander. "Marcus." Xander's voice boomed across the courtyard as he spotted them. "Thank God you're alive. When your distress beacon finally got through and we traced you here, I thought the worst." "I'm fine, Xander." "Better than fine, actually." "Are you?" Xander's eyes flicked to Seraphina with undisguised suspicion. "Because from what Lady Nightshade tells me, you've been coerced into some kind of alien marriage contract. She says these people have laws that can trap outsiders into bonding ceremonies." Marcus felt. Seraphina stiffened beside him and saw Vesper's satisfied smile. The trap was elegantly laid. Any attempt to defend his marriage would look like he was under alien influence, while any admission of its political nature would invalidate the bonding. "Nobody coerced me into anything," Marcus said carefully. "I made a choice." While surrounded by armed aliens who had just witnessed you interfere in their ritual combat, one of Xander's mercenaries, a hard-faced woman Marcus didn't recognize, stepped forward. "That's not exactly a free choice, Marcus." Xander's voice softened with genuine concern. "I know you. You're not the settling down type, especially not with ... He gestured vaguely at Seraphina. "With what, exactly?" Marcus's voice went dangerously quiet. "You know what I mean. Look, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with her people, but this isn't you. You're a free trader, a wanderer. You belong in space, not tied down to some alien political game." It was the moment of choice Marcus had been dreading. He could see the pain in Seraphine's eyes as she waited for his response, the calculation in Vesper's, the hope in Xander's. Around the courtyard, dozens of people waited to see whether he would choose his old life or his new one. "You're right," Marcus said finally. The old Marcus Kane would never have gotten involved in local politics or accepted responsibility for people he barely knew. But maybe the old Marcus Kane was missing something important. He took Seraphine's hand, feeling the warmth of her skin and the slight tremor that revealed her nervousness. "This is Seraphina Valdres, my wife according to the laws of her people, and my choice is a man who's finally found something worth fighting for. If you can't accept that, then you don't know me as well as you thought." Xander's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, disappointment, and finally, reluctant understanding. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious. And if I said I had a job lined up that would make us both rich enough to buy our own planets?" Marcus felt Seraphine's hand tighten in his. "I'd say that some things are worth more than money." Xander studied him for a long moment, then surprised everyone by breaking into a grin. "Well, I'll be damned." Marcus Kane domesticated. "Never thought I'd see the day." His expression grew more serious. "But if this is what you really want, then I'm happy for you. Just ... Be careful, old friend. Politics is a dangerous game, and you're playing with people who've had centuries to perfect their strategies." It was then that the attack came. The explosion rocked the courtyard, sending crystal shards flying like deadly rain. Marcus threw himself over Seraphina as more explosions followed, each one perfectly placed to cause maximum chaos. Through the smoke and confusion, armed figures poured into the courtyard, not Xander's mercenaries, but professional soldiers in unmarked armor. Assassins. Someone screamed. Marcus rolled to his feet, the Valdres blade appearing in his hand as if by magic. The crystal weapon blazed with inner fire, and he felt the familiar surge of enhanced strength and speed that came with wielding it. Around the courtyard, the various factions that had been facing off moments before now worked together against the common threat. Xander had produced weapons seemingly from nowhere and was barking orders to his mercenaries. Valdres guards formed protective circles around the nobles. And in the center of it all, Seraphina fought with deadly grace, her own blade weaving patterns of light through the smoke. But there were too many attackers, and they'd planned their assault well. Marcus saw one of them breaking through toward Seraphina, saw the poisoned dart in the assassin's hand, saw that she was engaged with two other opponents, and couldn't defend herself. Time seemed to slow as Marcus threw himself across the courtyard. The dart meant for Seraphina took him in the shoulder instead, and he felt fire race through his veins, even as his blade found the assassin's heart. Marcus! Seraphi's cry seemed to come from very far away, Dot, as the poison dragged him toward darkness. Marcus's last coherent thought was that he'd kept his promise. He'd chosen his side, chosen his love, and chosen to protect what mattered most. The crystal blade pulsed once more with warmth, and then everything went black.